Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Skye, and in today's video we're doing a 3 looks 1 palette plus a review with the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette. Now if you aren't interested in hearing my review of the palette, skip to this timestamp right here, it'll take you straight to look 1. But if you'd like to hear my review, then just keep on watching. If you don't know, Beauty Bay are basically like a Sephora. They carry a lot of different brands on their website, but they also make their own makeup as well. This is a 20 pan palette and it retails for £15, and this is what the inside looks like. This palette has 7 shimmers and 13 mattes. And as we can see, it ranges from blues, teal greens, khaki greens, and reds and oranges. Now Beauty Bay have said that this palette is limited edition, however they are working on a restock right now, which is why I'm trying to get this video out as soon as possible. And as always, let's talk about the matte formula first. The mattes in this palette are incredibly blendable, very, very pigmented right off the bat, and very easy to blend, I find. I will say a few of the mattes in this palette do look a bit different on the eye than they do in the pan. For an example, Marigold right here, it looks a lot darker on the eyes. Not a lot darker, but maybe like a couple shades deeper than this in the pan. But this basically has the same depth of Sunrise, basically, and I just prefer a bit more differentiation there. But otherwise, the other mattes, mint as well, this one does look a little bit different on the eyes. I don't know, it just looks a little bit more like greyish on the eyes, a little bit. However, those are the only mattes that look different on the eyes. The rest of them are true to colour like they are in the pan. But other than that, this matte formula is absolutely divine. Very creamy, pigmented, very easy to blend. Quite a bit of fallout, I must say, if you pick up too much on your brush. And these eyeshadows are a softer formula, which I do prefer a softer formula. So there is quite a bit of powder kick up. There is some fallout with these mattes if you apply a little bit too much, but they do whisk away quite easily. Or you could just do your eyes first and avoid that problem altogether. But for me, I don't really count fallout as an issue. I don't really care about it, but I know some of you may do. I am incredibly impressed with the deeper mattes in here, especially like Twilight, Ivy, Earth, and Raw. Those mattes, so richly pigmented. You don't really need that much to build up the colour, because I find that some of these darker mattes, like in other formulas, you do have to kind of build them up, and they can look a bit grey with how deep they are, especially deep navies particularly. But these deep shades are so rich on the eyes and beautiful. I will say that Poppy and Raw is deeper than Poppy, as we could see in the pan, but I wish it was a bit darker, because it's just not enough depth compared to Poppy. If this was maybe like 3 shades darker, it would be perfection. A matte that I wasn't as impressed with is Eucalyptus right here. This is like a deep, like khaki green olive shade. I do find that if you layer this one a little bit too much, it just lifts on itself and it becomes a little bit patchy, so you do have to be a bit careful with that shade, which is a shame because it's such a nice shade, but that's something to keep in mind. Other than Eucalyptus, I find that none of these mattes have any issues wearing on my eyes. They wear beautifully. I use the Milani eyeshadow primer and I have oily lids, and these work perfectly on top of that. I also do my eyeshadows light to dark, not dark to light, so that's something to keep in mind as well. There is a beige bone-coloured matte in here, which, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of. However, that being said, I do use this shade quite a bit for blending out the edges. Normally I just use pressed powder for that, but I don't have a pressed powder, I have a loose powder in my collection now. So this shade has been useful for blending out the edges, but in all honesty, I find that if they put like an iridescent shade in here, like a sparkly iridescent, that would make this palette even more universal, I think. I just think, why do we have a bone-coloured matte in here? Just why? And that kind of transitions us into talking about the shimmers in here. Now, these shimmers are very, like, squishy. They're kind of like Colourpop Super Shock shadows. And I absolutely love the shimmers in this palette. They're very sparkly, very intense. Ray doesn't have that much of a base colour to it, but the rest of them do, and they are gorgeous. The only shimmer in this palette that I'm a little bit disappointed with is Heat right here. This is just not as sparkly as the others. Let me do a comparison for you. And it feels firmer in the pan, which I don't know what it is. I know that red metallics and red mattes, just red eyeshadows in general, are more difficult to make. But this one feels quite solid. Like when you swatch it, this is like a completely different texture. So I'll swatch Heat right here. It does look pretty in the swatch. As you can see, it is nicely metallic, but compared to the other shades in this palette, you'll see it's just just not as nice. I'll actually swatch Lime and Breeze for you. As you can see on the finger, a lot more high shine, and if I just plop them right there, yeah, you can just see how Lime and Breeze are they just have that high shine factor, and Heat, while it is still a nice metallic, it's just not as high shine as the others. It is a stunning shade still, but the formula is definitely different. Like I said, it doesn't feel like that putty formula. It's a lot harder and a bit more firmly pressed in the pan, and I find that even swatching it, you can probably see right here, I do have hard pan in it now just from swatching it, so I would have to scrape that off. The rest of the metallics in here though, as you can see, they have like quite big dips in them because the formula is so squishy. If you dig your brush a little bit too firmly in there, you can accidentally pick up too much product. I do find that the shimmers in here work very beautifully with a finger and a brush and a wet brush. Also with glitter glue, they work well all application ways. I do find though, if I don't use a glitter glue or a wet brush with these, that these do crease on me slightly. I find that they crease around at the 6 hour mark for me if I don't have any tacky base underneath them or use a wet brush. However, if I use a glitter glue or a wet brush, these don't crease on me. They might crease at like the 12 hour mark, I find, but very slightly, very, very slightly. And like I mentioned, I do have oily lids. But overall, what do I think of this palette? This palette pleasantly surprised me. I knew that I would like it because the color story is pretty, but like this is a grungy, colorful lover's dream. The mattes in here work gorgeously, except for eucalyptus, and you gotta remember that marigold isn't as, like, it's a little bit darker than it looks like in the pan, and same with mint, but other than that, this is fantastic. Fucking fantastic. The mirror also is really big as well, which is a big plus. The color story is gorgeous, the shimmers are beautiful. All three of the looks that I did, that you'll see in a moment, they are all so fucking different, and this is such a like versatile palette. You can do so many different things with it, and it's not a rainbow palette, which I really enjoy. You could do some neutral looks in here if you really wanted to, like you could just stick with Earth, Fossil, and Marigold and do a really pretty neutral look. But overall, you're gonna get some good color in this one. And also, probably the biggest deciding factor for me, it's £15. Like, this is one of the cheapest palettes in my collection, which is fucking wild to me. I do not understand how Beauty Bay made this gorgeous of a palette for £15. Now, bear in mind, I have tried the Beauty Bay Pastels palette, one of the worst palettes I've ever used in my entire life. That palette, dog shit. Never fucking buy it. I know it's cheap, it's shit. Don't even waste your money. This though, the formula in this, dreamy. Absolutely dreamy. Now, if I had to rate this palette out of 10, normally when I rate palettes out of 10, I think about, you know, the formula, the price, the color story, and all of that kind of thing. Those all factor in. And I think this palette, I'd have to give it probably an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. The reasons why it's not a 10 out of 10 is because personally I had a bit of trouble with eucalyptus. These two mattes, I just wish they were slightly different. If Marigold was like a bright yellow, then this would be a 9 out of 10 for me. And also the fact that this bone-colored matte I don't think it should be in here, and Heat is a little bit lackluster, to be honest, and I wish that raw was deeper, which is why it's an 8.5 out of 10, but still, 8.5 out of 10, that's basically an A. I think that's an A. So yes, I absolutely love this palette. I would definitely recommend it if you've been eyeing it and it comes back in stock. I do think that it is worth picking up. I will be doing a video where I dupe this palette because since it is limited edition, it won't be around forever, so I think it might be fun to see like me try and dupe this with other shades in my collection. But if you love grungy, colourful makeup looks, then this is definitely a winner. Anyways, that is the review portion of this video finished. Now let's get on into the 3 looks that I made with this palette. First, I'm taking the shade Leaf, and I'm going to be putting this in the outer half of my crease, so we're not going to be putting it in the inner portion of the crease. Does that make any sense? And we're just blending it and kind of winging it out. Now I'm taking the shade Marigold, and we're going to be putting this in the inner portion of the crease, and just kind of packing it on and then blending it out softly. And now I'm taking the shade Eucalyptus, and I'm going to be using a packing brush and just packing that on the outer V. Now with this shade, like I mentioned in the intro, it does tend to get patchy, so I am blending this out very, very carefully and just kind of patting it instead of swiping, and I'm doing slight blends. I'm trying to be as careful as I can with this shade to make sure it doesn't go patchy. Next I'm taking the shade Sunrise, and I'm going to be blending this on the lower lash line. And to deepen things up a bit further, I'm taking the shade Earth and I'm patting that on the outer portion. Now I found that this shade does look a little bit patchy, just a little bit, but when I did it on the other eye, it didn't turn patchy, so I don't know what it was. I'm gonna be honest, no clue. Now I'm taking the shade Lime, and I'm going to be spraying my brush a little bit since I'm not using a glitter glue, and just putting that on my lid. This shade is fucking magnificent. I'm such a big fan of it. It's so high shine and metallic. It's stunning. For my inner corners, I'm taking the shade Fossil. And to match the lower lash line, I'm going to be using the Linda Hallberg Mood Crayon in Likeable Mood in the waterline. For my blush, I'm going to be using the Lethal Tendril blush. This is a stunning orange blush. And for my highlight, I'm using the Essence Choose Your Own Glow palette in the shade Candlelit Glow. Time for fake freckles. I'm using the Kimchi Chic Fake Freckle product. This is the only look in the 3 looks that I actually wore freckles, so you're gonna see the process. Just tap them on and blend them out. For my lips, I'm using the Melt Liquid Lipstick in the shade Chestnut. And that is the end of look number 1. Firstly, we're going into the shade Skye, and we're going to be putting this shade on the inner portion of our crease, and I'm just patting it in and then blending it out slightly, and we're not going to take this throughout the entirety of our crease, just keep it in the inner portion. Now I'm taking the shade Twilight on a really, really tiny pencil brush, and I'm just going to be kind of carving out and deepening up the inner portion of that crease. I don't really know how to describe it in all honesty. It's just kind of deepening it up, I guess. And then I'm going to be blending out the edges a little bit with a little bit of that Skye shade. This look is basically a lot of packing on colour, blending it out, repacking it on. It's a lot of that, and I did cut a lot of it out because it was a little bit monotonous. But anyways, now I'm taking the shade Poppy, and I'm going to be creating a wing, and I'm following basically my waterline and winging it out from there and blending that out slightly. To deepen up that wing further, I'm taking the shade Raw and just putting that right on the edges. Now we're going to be cutting the crease, and I'm going to be using the Kaleidos Tone Activator Eye Primer. It's basically a tinted primer. And just cutting that crease to make a really sharp line. You could always use concealer or whatever eye base you have. I'm just using the Kaleidos one. Wouldn't really recommend it because this one creases on me, but I'm just using what I have. And yeah, just taking that on a paddle brush and just carving out that cut crease. I do love a cut crease action, I cannot lie. And we're gonna really set in that primer. I'm using the shade Snow for this and just really packing it on, making sure it's super set in place, because if you don't, it's gonna crease on you and just ruin all the hard work that you've done, so just really make sure it's set down. And if Snow doesn't match you, I recommend using your pressed powder, because that's what I normally do. And now I'm taking the Fenty Pixie Epoxy on that same angled brush, and I'm going to be outlining where the wing is, and just underneath where we've cut the crease as well. This is so we can layer shimmers on top of it, because I really wanted to incorporate the shimmers in this look. The first shimmer we're going to be using is the shade Ocean. This is such a stunning deep navy metallic, and I'm using the same angled brush and just patting that on top of the glitter primer. Now, patting works better than swiping. Well, like, I do a combination of the both. Swiping makes it a bit more smoother, patting it on really adds the colour on, and now for the wing I'm taking the shade Heat and doing the same technique. For my inner corners, I'm taking the shade Ray. This is one of my favourite shades in the palette. It's such a beautiful inner corner shade. I'm going to be using two eyeliners in my waterline, the first one being the Linda Hallberg Anger Mood Crayon for the red portion, and then for the blank portion I'm using the LA Girl eyeliner in the shade Marshmallow. Off camera, I added some half lashes. They're Wiki lashes in the style Ellie, cut in half. For blush, I'm going to be using the Fenty Beauty Cream Blush in the shade Daiquiri Dip, and we're not going to go super blush heavy today, but I wanted a red blush to match the red wing that we have going on. For my highlighter, I'm using the Juvia's Place Tribe Highlighter in Volume 3, the lightest shade that they have. And for my lips, I'm using the Black Moon Cosmetics Sinister Satin lipstick in the shade Elm Street. Sinister Satin is so difficult to say. It's such a tongue twister, but it's a stunning deep, deep red. And that, my friends, is the end of look number 2. Starting off, we're jumping straight into the glitter primer. I'm using the Fenty Pixie Epoxy, and I'm just going to be sketching out a nice big winged shape. I absolutely love doing this technique when I want to use shimmers all over the lid. It really makes them stick together and also just maintain that shape. So first we're going in with the shade Breeze, and we're going to be putting this in the inner portion of our lids. For the outer portion of the wing, we're going to be taking the shade Moss. This shade is very unique to my collection. It's a very deep emerald green metallic. It's not really emerald green. A very, very deep green metallic, let's just say. And we're just putting that straight on top of the glitter glue yet again, and just following the shape. And if you find that you can't be as precise as you can be, take an angled brush with a bit of the shimmer and then just go over the edges. It creates a very sharp line. Now I'm going to take the shade Mint and put this in the inner portion of my crease. We're going to be creating basically like a negative spaced floating eyeliner type situation with eyeshadow. Right next to that mint shade, we're going to be taking the shade Forest and doing the same thing, just kind of ombreing it a little bit. And finally, for this eyeliner moment, I'm taking the shade Ivy, which is the darkest shade, and then doing that on the outer portion. For my inner corners, I'm yet again taking the shade Ray. I can't get over how stunning of a shade this is. And with the inner corner, I'm also going to be pulling that a little bit onto the lid, just to kind of make it flow with the other shimmers a little bit better. For my blush, I'm using the Cover FX Blush Duo in the shade Soft Peach, and I'm going to be using the matte shade in this look. For my highlight shade, I'm using the same shade from Juvia's Place, the Tribe Highlighter in Volume 3. And to finish up the look, I'm using the Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb in the original shade, Fenty Glow. And with that, that wraps up look number 3. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know, have you picked this palette up? What are your thoughts on it? Which look was your favourite? If you'd like to see more makeup content from me, then follow me on my Instagram. It's beautyybyskye right here. I post all my looks there and I'm active on there every single day. If you'd like to support me further, I do have my own candle business, Rain Cloud Candles Co. The link to shop will be down below, and we are a small queer-owned business based in the UK and we make handmade candles, so give us a follow if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you here. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.